Is everybody else signed on? So, okay.
Yeah, I could see the attendees. We're good to go.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. On behalf of the New Mexico Tribal Homeownership Coalition, thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today. I would like to give a special thanks to James Ration, Realty Officer, and Lionel Holmes, Realty Specialist. This call today is going to be very informal. The main focus of this call is to kind of regroup on COVID-19 and how we can continue to build our relationship with BIA and how we can all work together with BIA to make the process of residential leases a lot smoother for all parties involved. Any questions that you might have, please submit them in the chat box, or you can raise your hand. It's real informal. And I guess maybe we could start with Mr. Ration. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Good morning, everyone, and I appreciate that the coalition invited the BIA, myself and Lionel. Unfortunately, if we had this last year prior to COVID, we'd still have one of my staff employees, Sharon Kidman, on the call. So anyway, my name is James Ration. I'm the Southern Pueblo's Realty Officer. I've been at this position almost 3 years as the Realty Officer. Prior to that, I was a Realty Specialist and Acting Realty Officer off and on at Eastern Navajo Agency in Crown Point for about 10 years. Prior to that, I was at the Regional Realty Office at the Northwest Regional Office in Portland, Oregon for about close to 10 years. So, and then I spent a couple of years at a Sacramento Regional Realty Office, BIA. So just kind of give you that in a nutshell. So, as we go through this meeting, I'm also still learning the process sometimes how this agency works and how the different departments work, because when I came in, which is no fault of anybody, I guess just I'm assuming based on my level of being in the federal government, I was just it was just on hand. You hit the ground. Nobody told you. No introductions were given to me on my part. I didn't go and talk to other departments before the realty officer left this agency and went to somewhere else. So I just kind of been learning along the ropes, of course, internally with the BIA, trying to make my contacts and connections and, who I need to work with. So just so you know, sometimes I run into that, just like you run into hurdles on your side or maybe internally with the BIA. I have to do that too, because I'm still learning the ropes with the agency, not the agency, but with their outside regional staff, and making those connections. So I try to, so it can be at least this process can be a little bit smoother for everybody, including me. So, just to kind of let you know. So that's about it in a nutshell. As I mentioned in my experience, and I'll kind of go over a little bit about the office. I think there's 4 departments under the Southern Pueblo's office, agency. And our boss is a superintendent who has approval authority by delegation from the regional director. So any of these leases most realty documents can get approved by the superintendent. We don't have to go to the region. Some BIA agencies don't have that luxury of having a superintendent, just so you guys know. And sometimes they have, and when they need to get realty documents approved, then they have to go to the region. So just kind of keep that in mind. Say if you guys move from Albuquerque somewhere else and you have to deal with another agency, sometimes that agency doesn't have the luxury of having a superintendent, either because they don't have the money or or other stuff. But I'm lucky enough to have a superintendent at this agency. And so that superintendent has the approval authority. So if a residential lease needs to be approved or mortgaged, I can we can run it to that to the superintendent. Then he can look at it and decide what he or she wants to do as far as approval. Then we have administrative services. We have a branch of natural resources. We have my branch of real estate services, branch of forestry, and branch of social services. So all those departments are under the superintendent. So sometimes, superintendent gets busy on approving forms and documents because he has all those departments involved with his agency. It's just not me. I can't just, former superintendent Antonio was very cordial and very good. So if I needed something and he knew it was pressing, I could work with him, and he would take time out. And Superintendent Antonio retired in September, and I think he put 45 years of service, not with just BIA, but with other entities, federal government entities. So just to let you know. And then when he retired, this agency had an acting superintendent for about a month until the beginning of November. Then November came, and then we had another acting name. His name was Clancy Ostawa. He applied for the position, and then about 3 weeks ago, he notified us that he became superintendent. And he's the former superintendent of Zuni agency. So he's now the agency superintendent as of 3 weeks ago, just to let you know, okay? Of course, that's some filling out process for everybody under every department head and every employee under this agency, just to kind of let you know. As far as my department, there's me, there's Lionel Holmes, who's a realty specialist. I have another position I'm yet to fill. I'm working on it. Probably, I don't know when it's going to be filled, but I'm starting to process for another realty specialist. And then I've been fortunate to have this agency has a agency surveyor who works under my branch, and not every agency has a surveyor. So I'm fortunate to have a surveyor. So just to let you know, our position opened last year around March, where Sharon Kidman used to be my realty specialist, and she has since moved to being a realty specialist for central office, which is Washington, D.C. And how the BIA goes is our main office is called central office, and that's in D.C. Then we have regional realty offices, that are held in specific areas of the country. Like here, Albuquerque has a Southwest regional office. Then there's the agencies under those regional offices. Like, for example, we're under the Southwest region, Southern Pueblos. So there's other regions and agencies throughout the BIA. If you guys aren't educated on that, like for example, I came from Navajo, where their regional office is in Gallup, but the agency I worked for was in Crown Point, Eastern Navajo. Okay, so just kind of a little setup about how the BIA is. So we're trying to fill that position that Sharon had left, and it's been off and on, not a battle, but just off and on because we just didn't have the time. Then COVID hit. So, that took like a backseat to everything because we were trying to scramble and trying to make sure our employees were safe, trying to telework, trying to get laptops, and even to this day, we're still working on getting laptops. So it's COVID has only almost been here a year because the federal government allows employees, if it's allowable, to telework if their work allows for that. My department with realty and realty specialists, our work, even though we're allocated to telework, we usually don't get the approval because the work and the documents we have are what they consider trust records and there's a lot of privacy that go with these records. We can't just pick them up and walk outside the building. They have to stay in house because they're title trust records. So with that going on with COVID, it's at times it's difficult to do work at home, but an administration here is trying to make sure that all the staff here at the BIA, whether it's the region or the agency, is comfortable coming to work, is okay feeling to come to work mentally and physical and emotionally. So for me, for example, I try to get in 3 times a week, but I don't spend 8 hours a day. I might spend half the workday, like 4 hours, and I try to stay home a couple of days, or it just depends. It just depends. My staff, my surveyor's usually here every day, because of course he can't always take his work home because he needs a specialized computer with a lot of memory and everything for survey work. Lionel is trying to work telework, but he comes in sporadically, and I don't really gauge when Lionel comes in. I leave it up to its what they call Boy Scouts honor, because I want to make sure he's okay, he's comfortable and happy and mentally, emotionally, because of COVID, because that takes, as well as you guys and we both all know, that that's a tough thing to work with. It's not like before you could just pick up and come into the office and nonchalantly not think about it. But when you have that going on, it's tough. So that has hampered some of the things. I don't think we're really behind on a lot of stuff. We try to move things as much as possible. As far as realty work, the other thing with realty, there's 15 different functions that realty people do, and residential leasing and mortgages are just one portion. And how they're divvied up is there's rights of ways, there's what they call acquisitions and disposals, which are land sales, gift deeds, feed of trust. There are tenure management. Tenure management is another word for leasing, and there's all types of leasing: business leasing, school leasing, residential, home site, grazing leases. So there's a lot of functions that realty people do, just so you know. And when you narrow it down, there's 15 different functions between acquisition and disposal, tenure management, and rights of ways. So you have, if you can grasp that idea, our job isn't just one job of leasing, and that's all we do. We do residential, we do other types of realty stuff, rights of way, like for example, or we go out to the field and do site inspections or lease compliance inspections. We do all that kind of stuff. And this agency doesn't have a big staff in realty compared to Eastern Navajo. Eastern Navajo, like with this agency, when my specialist was still here, there was 4 of us. And the land base here at the agency at Southern Pueblos is tribal, mostly tribal trust lands, and there are a few Indian allotments. In Eastern Navajo, where I came from a couple years ago, we had 10, our staff in realty was made up of 10, okay? And most of our lands were government lands. We had tribal trust lands, tribal band lands, we had Indian allotments, and that we had a huge land base. And so even with 10 staff members, it was still kind of difficult, but we still managed to do what we needed to do to complete our work. So different agencies have different amount of staff. So just to kind of give you an idea of what we work through. And I know with the previous president and all that stuff, we really didn't, it was tough, kind of tough to try to fill positions, but we tried, but we're still going to try. We're still going to fill that realty specialist position one way or the other. But it starts with me working on a bunch of paperwork for my HR office. There's like seven different documents that start with what they call a classification. And then once that classification is approved by the HR, then I can ask them to put it out for recruitment. And I don't know, sometimes that takes a while. So just to kind of let you know, if something is backlogged for you guys or you're trying to push something, my staff isn't 100% yet. So like I said earlier, I'm trying to work on the realty specialist position as we speak. So I hope that,
Sorry.
go ahead.
Sorry, just really quick. Sean Spruce has a question for you. We're going to go ahead and unmute him.
Miss who?
I think
Sean, are you there?
Sean Spruce.
Yeah, I just wanted to know the name. And I saw somebody else put this comment out there too. If you could just please repeat the name of the superintendent, the new superintendent, please. Thanks.
His name is Clayton Siastawa. Let me get it for you, and I'll spell the last name for you, okay?
Okay, thanks.
I just learned his pronunciation of his last name, and I think I did it correctly. Siastawa, Seoutewa.
And what was his first name?
Clayton, Clayton.
Okay, thank you, James. And there's another question also. If you can kind of just navigate us through the process, information on like timelines of environmental assessments, title status report, mail-in versus email requests.
Okay.
And who are the right departments to go to? I think Deborah Webster had a question. If you can Mr. Ration discuss how TDHEs and Realty Department can connect the right person at BIA to assign them to review compacts, contracts, and how the tribe is currently processing mortgage and leases.
Okay, let's see.
Navigate us through the process of that problem.
Okay, you're asking me a couple of questions, so let's see. The first one is about how we expect the package to come to us and how environmental gets involved in their timeline, correct?
Yeah, that would be good.
Okay, with environmental, when I came a couple years ago, we had an environmental person that would review the environmental stuff, the documents and everything. And we have currently a biologist. So when you do the environmental document, whether it's environmental assessment, there's three types of levels of environmental documentation. One is a category exclusion. The other one is an environmental assessment. Then the top one is environmental impact statement. So when, for example, residential lease is usually an EA environmental assessment. So when we had that person doing environmental, she used to review the environmental work and then work with the biologists here at the agency. But she retired about a year ago, a little bit over a year ago. So at that time, with her retiring, we started working with the regional environmental staff department on trying to process the environmental documents and getting the right sign-offs. And we're still doing that. And I don't know with this new superintendent if we're gonna hire an environmental person. He's been here not too long, so I can't give you an answer if we are or we aren't on the environmental person. but we work with the region, and they're really good. Since that happened, I've had really good relationship and experience with the regional environmental staff. So I want you to know that. And like I told you, you have to build rapport and relationships with people. And I think I built a good relationship with the environmental staff. So it's easier for me to work with them and talk with them. They don't really have a time frame on when they need to complete the environmental work. And that's up to them. I can't push them. I'm not the department head. I can talk with the department, or I can talk to the employees and staff and ask them, hey, we're really waiting on this environmental review from your department. Do you think you guys can expedite it? And then they can tell me, yes, James, we'll work on it real quick, or no, James, and it's based on their workload. But like I said, in the past, so far, it seems like they're willing to work with us at the agency if we need something. So like I said, I don't know all their regulations. They have a huge book of regulations, just like Realty, we have our 25 CFR book. Environmental has their own regulations. And so I don't know if they have a timeline under their regulations, as far as if environmental assessment gets submitted to them, they have 30 days or 60 days or what have you. But like I said, we've been able to work with them, get the documents we need in a timely fashion, and move forward.
One of the questions I had for you, Mr. Ration, is on the environmental assessments. Is it better for, for us to, if we were to reduce, let's say, once we find out, who's in charge of the EAs, is it easier for us to go ahead and email that person and request an environmental, and what do we need to present? Or do they prefer for us to mail it in? Because I know how important it is for you to date stamp it. So I just want to make sure we're doing the right thing.
I think it's probably better to mail it in. And if it goes to the regional office, then they have a tracking system of when it's coming and who it was assigned to.
And who's attention? Just the environmental department, or?
Yeah. But I'm going to tell you, as I spoke to you earlier this morning, Sheila, when you called me before this call, the Realty, like for example, a residential lease, they're required documents by regulation, okay, by federal regulation, not by me, not by the agency, but by regulation, okay? You need to have a consent. In this case, if it's on tribal land, tribal resolution, a survey, ground survey, archaeological, biological, and environmental document. Okay. And when you have those and address other things like bonding and stuff like that, then you send that packet, the hard copy, triplicate, to us, the agency, for review. And that's considered a complete package if we have those fine main documents. Okay. In my previous experiences with Navajo, and I agree with that, and that working, the applicant is responsible for those 5 documents, not the BIA. So, for example, I'm James. Okay, I want a residential lease on a tribal piece. I work with the tribal housing office if the tribe has a housing department. And I am required on getting those documents. So I have to pay for the ground survey. I have to go and research and get my environmental, find an environmental company to do the environmental work and pay for that. Okay. In this agency, it's a little bit different. Sometimes the environmental group will help on getting the environmental, but sometimes they won't. But like I said, in the past, and I prefer it that way, is that the applicant submit all those 5 documents to the agency, Southern Pueblos, at one time. If we get 3 out of those 5 documents, or 2 out of the 5, by regulation, we will return that document back to the applicant and say this application, residential lease application is incomplete. It lacks blah, blah, blah. Please return it when you have the outstanding documents and we'll review it, okay? We don't want to keep incomplete packages, and by regulation, we are allowed to return them back to the applicant because they're incomplete. Our clock here at the agency for review starts when we have a complete package, and we have, I think it's 60 days to get a residential lease approved. That means review and all this stuff. But our clock doesn't start unless we have a complete package. Do you guys understand what a complete package is?
Well, can you briefly explain that? What's a complete package for you?
It's in this case on tribal land, it's a tribal resolution, a ground survey, an archaeologic, an ARC clearance, a biological clearance, and the environmental document, whether it's an EA or whatever. Those are the 5 main documents. And so when I get that, then if everything looks done, then to me that's a complete package. But that doesn't mean that there might be an issue inside one of those documents once we review them. But as far as us and our time frame, as far as Realty's clock starting the 60 days for approval, we need to have that package complete. So we need to have those 5 documents in-house at the agency. But if, like I mentioned, Sheila, if we get 2 out of the 5 in that initial mailing the packet to our agency, and we don't see 3 other documents, then we have a right by regulation to mail it back and tell you, the applicant, this residential lease application is incomplete. You're lacking this and this. Our clock doesn't start until, like I said, we have a complete package.
I just want to make sure, just to confirm, so to submit the process for the environmental assessment, we're going to go ahead and mail in a request to the environmental assessments department along with a tribal resolution.
No, this just for the environment. Like I said, in the real world, the applicant would already have that environmental done, and they would do it on their own and with their own dime, okay? But with this agency in this region, it seems like sometimes the region will go ahead and do the environmental review for an applicant. But that doesn't necessarily happen all the time. So what I tell people is that responsibility is on you. So like for me, Sheila, if you were getting a residential lease, you need to provide that. So you need to go out and hire your own environmental company to do your environmental work. And then once you do that, and you have the other 4 other documents, you just submit the environmental documents, which include the biological, the ARC, and the environmental document, plus the survey and the resolution. You submit it to our office. And then what happens is, if we get all those documents, we look at them and we see the environmental, we're gonna work with the environmental internally and say, hey, we got the regional office, we have Sheila's residential lease. We'd like to have the environmental office look at the environmental document and sign off that it's fine. And then once they do that review, then we get it back. Then we'll move it. We'll say, okay, everything's looking good. The only thing we're waiting for outstanding internally is the environmental review. once we get that environmental review from internal BIA staff, then we would move that package, complete package, forward to the superintendent for his review. So that's how it normally works. And I think submitting to the environmental office is a case-by-case basis. You know, in the past, since I've been here, if somebody from the tribe submits a environmental document, they might submit it directly to the environmental group upstairs at the regional office by email or by mail. I'll get a call or an email from the environmental group upstairs at the region. James, we have an environmental document and so-and-so is asking for a review. T was asking for a review, or whoever, Sheila. Do you guys know about this? Or do you guys have a lease package? Or, you know, and then we'll either have a lease package or we'll say that, hey, we were notified by Sheila about this morning, for example, that she is going to submit the lease package, but the environmental review is upstairs with you guys. And so we kind of keep one another informed between the regional environmental office and our office.
Mhm. So pretty much
And like
the,
I,
sorry.
go ahead.
So pretty much the environmental assessments has to be completed before we can even turn it in to Lionel, which. right,
For review.
To review.
Yep.
For approval, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, because they won't do anything and everything has to be hand delivered.
Yeah, I think it should. What you could do, Sheila, is, and everybody, you can email the document, but send the document, the original, by snail mail, if you want to. But if you do that, you guys just send us an email saying, you know, you can send me an email and CC Lionel, or just send me an email and say, hey, James, be on the lookout. We're going to, this residential lease package, we're sending by email, but we're going to be snail mailing the 3 originals. If you could review it, please do it. We appreciate, you know, please review, you know, then we'll have the heads up. And if we have the time to review the email submittal before the originals come, then of course we're a little ahead of the game.
Mhm.
And it just depends on time frame, you know.
Yeah, and I noticed, you know, I'm just trying to understand this for the other, you know, housing authorities and that, but if our CDFIs also, but if you're gonna, on the EAs, you said most of the borrowers, the clients will have to provide that own service, right, on their own. So any, you know, CDFIs or tribals, can BI still do the environmental assessments for them?
That's up to those environmental office. I can't dictate what they can and cannot do. See what I'm saying? I'm not the environmental office, so I can't talk on their behalf.
Oh,
They would
okay.
have to. And usually, if you guys are just the lenders, you guys are the guys getting the mortgage and all that stuff, or providing the mortgage documents.
Yeah, we just
You
want to
guys,
you can guide the tribal members, and you know.
yeah, and it's really up to the, like, if each tribe has a tribal housing office, then it's in my opinion, it's their responsibility along with the applicant to provide all those documents to the BIA completely.
Mhm.
Then we review it, and if it gets approved by the superintendent or it doesn't, then we provide a document back to the applicant saying, hey, it's approved. Then the applicant goes, oh, okay, now I can go to TIWA Lending and I'll take my approved residential lease that has been approved and hopefully recorded to TIWA and say, hey, Sheila, I'm looking to try to get a mortgage to build this home. Here's my approved residential lease. And of course, you, Sheila, would look at it and say, okay, looks fine. You start, you know, James, start filling, here's the paperwork to start the process for a mortgage. Correct? And then you would have all the documentation filled out for mortgage and send it to us, telling us, hey, James came in, he provided an approved residential lease, and here's the approved residential lease, and the mortgage, please review the mortgage and either, and if you can, process it.
That's what, yeah. What
To me, that's the normal process, and that's the process it should work like. Because if you guys send a mortgage, we're gonna look for the residential lease, and if we don't find a residential lease,
it's not going to get recorded.
yeah, what the heck?
Yeah,
That's
you don't
just
have to record.
we won't have anything to tie it to, and
Yeah.
so it's extra work that we have to do on our side, where it should have never came to us.
Correct.
So that, in my opinion, the residential lease has to be done prior to the mortgage.
James, this is Charlene. Just a quick question.
Yeah.
From our audience. Are you accepting digital copies of the mortgage for recording?
As the same thing goes with that, as far as what I mentioned to Sheila, we will accept the digital copy, but we want 3 original hard copies, snail mail copies. Because what happens, and I haven't been informed if it has changed, what happens is when we submit the documents for recording, all 3 of those originals get, we want 1 original and 2 copies, but the originals, all the documents get recorded in a recording number. So what happens internally, once that happens, we will send a copy to the applicant. We will send one to maybe, like for example, if it's a mortgage, you send me 3, okay? We'll send one to the applicant. We'll send one to the lender, a copy of that approved mortgage, and we'll keep one internally. And so if somebody says, hey, I never got a copy, then we can say, yeah, we sent you a copy, but hey, we'll check our file and see if we do have that copy. And then we can go to the file and say, oh, we have a copy, we're going to send it to you. So that's why we have it in triplicate. So those entities can get a copy of the document after it's gone through the formal approval and recording.
Okay, thank you. Sheila, if you don't mind, we have quite a few questions in our queue right now.
I know.
Adrian, could you unmute Deborah Webster? She has her hand.
Hello, good morning. How are you? Hi, James.
Good morning, Deborah. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. I have kind of an overarching context question or comment, I guess, or kind of how can we be more helpful to you and the BIA relative to your ability to continue to work. Next month will mark 12 months under COVID and COVID protocols and working from home and remotely. It seems like HUD, Department of Treasury, state agencies are able to kind of develop the systems to be more effective in doing their work. They've got laptops, they have staff, they may not be there all the time, but they're doing time in and time out. Based upon what you said initially, makes me wonder whether or not BIA is getting the proper support from wherever it needs to get in order for you to continue to do your work. So if you're not getting laptops and you're not getting you're short staffed, and I can say this isn't just in New Mexico, this is all over the country, we're hearing that. So what can we do to advocate for the right resources? Because you were saying BIA may not, your agency may not hire an environmental person. What do we need to do to get those kind of resources moving? You know, whether it's contacting Deborah Hayland, whatever it is, it just seems like the BIA is kind of left shortchanged in its resources to do what it needs to do. So that's my overarching comment and question to you. And then secondly, is a more detailed question, and this is relative to adopting environmental assessments and impact statements prepared by other federal agencies. So a lot of our TDHEs are very experienced in preparing environmental assessments or reviews relative to what's predominantly going to be the residential side. So it's going to be a Cat X. And so is that something that you've experienced in terms of like, if you get a kind of an environmental assessment that's a Cat X request, that's prepared under the HUD format, for example, versus
Okay,
the BIA format?
Let me answer that question because I know you had an overview on just a suggestion, but let me answer this question for you. On the overlying CADX, for example, from an outside entity like HUD or whatever, that still has to be reviewed and concurred to by the BIA Environmental Office. I don't just accept it because, hey, another federal agency did it. I have to make sure that it follows a protocol where it goes to the regional environmental office, and they can usually just look at it, and if all the guidelines that they need are followed, they can concur to it and say, James, we concur that this is a good CADX, and then I'll go from there. And usually it doesn't take too long, Deborah, for them to review and concur to it. I've done that maybe several times. I haven't had one turned back because there was some issue with it. It just takes some time for them to review it upstairs, and then they'll most likely concur to it. Then I accept it.
Okay. And James, do they have to sign it? Does BIA have to sign when that concurrence?
They usually issue, I'm trying to recollect, okay, it's been a while, Deborah.
Mm-hmm.
I think, if I remember correctly, they will just send me a cover memo that they, Southern Pueblos Agency, we reviewed and we concur with HUD's CADX.
Okay.
Then I'll accept that.
Thank you.
And on the other ones, Deborah, on helping and and all that stuff and trying to do our work, as I mentioned earlier, which should have just been my introduction, but I just rambled on. But as I mentioned earlier, we are in the process of getting that hiree, and then as far as teleworking, this office, like I mentioned, Realty, Deborah, even if COVID didn't hit us, we don't have that luxury of teleworking just because of our documents that we look at. So when COVID hit, this department we didn't have any laptops because we never would utilize them. We'd never really go, in my outlook, I would mostly use a laptop to telework. We do go to the field, but we don't always take computers. We usually just take pen and paper and we write our notes down and come back and then translate it. So we never really bought laptops. And so even prior to COVID, we were trying to get laptops and they were hard to get for some reason. We can't just buy it, go to the store and buy it, Deborah. It's not like we're working with a private company where as long as you have the company credit card and get approval of the finance officer and the president or whatever, you can go buy it. When we buy stuff here for the federal government, you have to go through some hoops. Sometimes there's a requisition you have to get approved, and that requisition has to get reviewed and all that stuff, and then you can order this stuff. Also, you have to go internally to the IT office and get approval there. So it's just not like a private entity that there's less hoops where in my view, it's easier to purchase. So we never really bought anything, even prior to me showing up 2.5 years ago. The staff never had really laptops. So that's something we're trying to get. And like I said, we finally got some. When COVID hit, Deborah, the regional office, was kind enough to supply me with the laptop. So I had to run through all these hoops, because you can't just look at government documents at home just because you want to. You have to get approval your computer has to be reviewed, and you have to have the right computer, the right clearance for these documents, because you don't want anybody just to come in and break a firewall and be accessing these documents. So that's one of the things that's sometimes time consuming, but we work through it. So like I was telling everybody, I'm lucky and I'm fortunate as a realty person to actually work from home. And sometimes, I enjoy it, because prior to COVID, I never had that luxury. I had to be in the office every day. I couldn't go home and take a laptop and do my work. I'd have to be, even if it was just writing memos or responding to emails, I couldn't do that. I had to be in the office as a realty person. So with COVID, it made it where we can do that. And, we can get things done, Deborah. We're not just waiting at home or saying, oh, we can't get it done. If there's something that needs to get done and we know we can do it, then we'll get it done. We'll get it done. It just depends. That's all. We're not here just to say, hey, blame COVID, we can't get in. We'll manage, and we'll try to complete the package as quick as we can. And if it's a mortgage, we know mortgages are timely, so we will get in the office and we will look at it, and we will try to move it forward. And we also have to realize too, we have to make time for the superintendent to look at this stuff. And as I mentioned earlier, there's other departments that the superintendent oversees and approves documents. So it's just not realty. I can't just send them a mortgage and hope that once I send it to him that he'll sign it in a day or two. But usually they'll move quick on those mortgages, because they know there's a time frame for the mortgages. When we had Superintendent Antonio, he would move quick on those. I'm sure our new superintendent's going to do the same thing. So,
James, I don't mean to interrupt.
Yeah.
But I know we're getting closer, and I know you have to get off the call at 12. But can you touch a little bit on the title status reports and the time on that? I know we didn't talk about that, and I know everybody probably wants to hear a little bit about that.
Okay. Let me get back. Let me just make sure. So I hope I kind of answered that question for you, Deborah. And I do appreciate your comments and the private sector really wanting to help. I like that. I thank you guys for doing that. I appreciate that. I want you to know that. Okay. So like I said, Deborah, I hope that helped a little bit. If it didn't and you need a sidebar, you have my cell phone number for work. You can give me a call if you need to, Deborah, okay? I don't know if she's still there, but okay. On the TSRs, of course, when COVID hit, they were scattered too, because a lot of their stuff is tied to a main system here, and I don't think they had laptops either. So I think a lot of their staff are working too now. By management, for us, by management, meaning the regional director, she doesn't want us in the building, but she understands the importance of moving these documents. So she tells us, if you come in the building, please be cautious. Please follow the recommendations that the governor has provided. Wear a mask, stay 6 feet, don't congregate. if you come and just do what you need to do and go home. So, you know, she doesn't want any of us to get sick and stuff like that. But, you know, so we do what we can. So with the title office, if you ask for a TSR for something, we'll try to move it as quick as possible out of the agency realty department down to the title office. They have 30 to 45 days to do a certified TSR. If it's a TSR, certified TSR for a mortgage, they try to get those ones done a little bit quicker. I can't remember exactly what the time frame is, just to let you know. But usually, we've been fortunate with our title office. Even though they have 30 to 45 days, sometimes we get them back in 3 days, 2 weeks. So this to let you know, our title office is working as fast as they can, and we'll always try to get it to us quicker. I think they have a skeleton crew too, as far as coming in, but we still get our TSRs in a timely manner. So just to kind of update that. And I know some entities aren't accepting like endorsements. So for example, if we did a TSR 6 months ago or 3 months ago, and that same lender is asking for a TSR in the same location, I know we used to do endorsements, and I understand one lender, I don't know who they are, and I won't name any of them, didn't want to accept endorsements. Say, you know, an endorsement would say, you know, there was a certified TSR done for this property 3 months ago, nothing has changed. To me, that's good, but I know you guys as lenders, you have different criteria you have to deal with. But I think that speeds up the process if the lender would accept an endorsement, because especially if nothing has changed. And a certified TSR always goes down to the title office. There's 2 types of TSRs, just to let you know, okay? There's an uncertified and there's a certified. The uncertified, they don't really check to look at if there's new encumbrances that show up on the property. And we can issue those kind of documents, okay? The agency realty office can issue an uncertified TSR. It'll have encumbrances on them, but the encumbrances might not be as current, of course, as a certified. And what I understand as certified, they'll go down and they'll look at the property and see when the last encumbrance took place, and then go from there to see if there's any new ones on that property. So just to kind of let you know, the realty staff here, we can issue TSRs, they just won't be certified. And I know you, as lenders, you guys want the certified ones. But for us, if we could issue it to it and it's uncertified and you guys will accept it, we can issue them real quick. I don't know if that helps, but overall for a certified, it takes 30 to 45 days, and for mortgage, it's a lot quicker. I think within a couple of days, they'll get that certified TSR to us.
Do you think like maybe in the future, you know, because the New Mexico Tribal Homeownership Coalition would like to maybe see if we can, you know, because this is more like an informal call, but maybe schedule something next month and maybe talk about the title status reports, you know, because it sounds like it could be pretty lengthy, and then maybe take time with the ERs, or depending what everybody's, you know, requests are. Is that something that maybe we can coordinate for our next, you know, maybe next month for a monthly call?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe you guys can talk about it if you guys would accept endorsements. I mean, that helps too, because then we don't have to go to the title office. We can just I can just sign off on an endorsement.
Okay. Does anybody have any other questions? It's almost 11:57 right now.
We have quite a few questions.
Okay.
I think he had
Yeah, so James, if you wouldn't mind, would you be okay if I compile all the questions together and send them over to you to answer when you have time?
Well, let me check something. Hold real quick, okay? Hold real
Okay.
quick, everybody. Let me check if they're actually going to have that get together, okay? Because I
Okay.
haven't seen an email. Just hold on. I'll be right back.
One of his staff members is leaving, right? So they're having a luncheon for him. Is that what he's?
Yeah.
Sheila and Charlene, I mean, we have Lisa Weiss here, who's also with BIA, and she's been pretty active on the chat. Maybe we can either invite her if Mr. Ration needs to leave, or do another session. There are really a lot of questions that went unanswered. We didn't cover the 25 CFR 162 or the mortgage handbook in terms of how folks would use that. So there's process questions in terms of regulation, and then there's what happens at the individual agency. And we're only covering Southern Pueblo Agency right now. So, you know, if folks are at Zuni or Northern Pueblo Agency or Eastern Agency at Navajo or what have you, they're going to have different possibly processes given whatever their headcount issues are at the time. So it looks like go ahead.
I'm back. We're still having a luncheon, but I'll answer questions. So go ahead and ask the questions, because I don't want to get caught up in not answering stuff which gets submitted in writing. So so far, I hope I answered some of the questions for everybody, and they kind of understand. So go ahead. If somebody wants to answer a question, ask a question. I'm sorry.
Denise Zuni said, should a TSR be submitted to Realty, and who will in turn send request to OLTR?
Denise Zuni. What did she say again? I'm sorry, Sheila.
She put, should a TSR be submitted to Realty, who will in turn send request to OLTR?
Oh, okay. So the acronym is Department of Land Titles and Records. But what happens is the requesting office sends the TSR to the agency request. And then once we look at the request, and if we have everything done, once we get the request, then we'll submit it to the title office. That's how the process goes.
And then Denise also asked, is the agency expediting leases and mortgages? Has there been a directive from the region or central office to expedite leases and mortgages?
There's no expediting other than it's a case-by-case basis. I mean, we have the regulations where we have to get them done as long as they're completely submitted to the agency within a time frame. I think it's a 60-day window.
And then Nina Jaramillo asked, will there be a list of contact information for each of the realty specialists for each area of the region?
That's up to you to contact Mr. Hickman. I don't handle the regional realty department who have realty specialists. I only handle my supervisions only to the agency. And anytime you work with any of the tribes that are under this agency, you should be working with this agency. Now, if you're working with tribes, Nina, outside of this agency, like for example, tribes up north, then you work with Northern Agency, the Northern Agency up there. But if it has to deal with, like for example, Sandia, Santa Ana, Kiowa, Zia, or or Acoma, then you deal with us. The only time you go to work with the regional realty office is if the tribe compacts the realty department, or so and I just learned this, like I told you guys, I'm learning on the fly too at times. Once a tribe has compacted, meaning they took that realty program and they're administering it, It's a little bit different than a tribe under Hearst Act. But once they took that whole realty department, then the mortgage and all that stuff goes to the regional realty office, not to the agency anymore, even though that tribe was still with the agency at one time. Like, for example, Jemez Pueblo and Isleta del Sur are compacted tribes. So anything that has to do with realty need to go to the regional realty office. So just to let you know, anything that gets compacted, any tribes that get compacted, their realty office gets compacted, then any function that once came to us as the realty office for the agency, now would go down to the regional realty office, Doug Hickman and his department. Does that make sense?
Makes to me.
Anyone? So just to clarify that, okay? So we still have the other tribes. The only one that has a Hearst Act so far for all functions of leasing is Isleta. So that means they get to process and approve all their leasing, and all we do as BIA is record it.
Mhm.
Okay?
Okay.
I think Coach de Pueblo has recently compacted their realty function. So anything that happens on Coach D now that used to happen when they were with us, they were their documentation or whatever goes to the regional realty office, not the agency anymore. Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Ration, there's a question on TAMS. Is TAMS only available to tribes that have compacted the realty services, or are other tribes able to access that as well?
I think, okay, I'm thinking, I haven't talked to the title office, but I think that's how it is, that if you're compacted, of course I think you have to go through a bunch of hoops in order to get TAMS to that compacted, to be administered under that tribal compact. You can't just ask the BIA and then they give it to you right that day you ask. I think you have to jump through a bunch of hoops to get approval to have a title office under your tribe. And I don't know those hoops you have to jump through. And like I was talking to Sheila this morning when she called me on my way to work, I know at one time Navajo was wanting to take over the title office, and then once they looked at what they had to do in order to do it, they decided that no, we'll just leave it with the federal government. So I based on that experience, I think there's of course numerous hurdles to jump. I'm not saying they can't be jumped, because I think in the Northwest, when I was up there in the Northwest, I think there was either one or I think one tribe, I think it was the Colville tribe in Washington. I think they had their own title office. So
Yeah.
it can be done. It can be done, but that tribal entity needs to probably work with, not with my office, but work with the title office and the tribal and the regional realty office.
Right. If you all were on our last webinar, we had the realty officer for Pueblo of Zuni, and she was previously with the BIA, and she was pretty. She made that point. She said it's an investment. The tribe had to make an investment to buy the terminals, and everything that goes along with that. And we've also heard that from Salish Kootenai, who were one of the first to take over that title function, realty function, and they said the same thing. I said the BIA is not gonna, once you own it, you own it, and you need to make the investment. So that's a calculus that tribes will need to make. I know there's been some discussion about trying to do that as a group, But you know, there are some solutions. And also, Mr. Ration, I just want to let you know that, of course, you know that Mr. Antonio, formerly superintendent, is now governor at Laguna. And I was able to work with him on the comments that went in on the proposed rule for modernization of LTROs. And we and others were able to advocate for and to suggest that more headcount is needed so that the BIA and the Realty offices can fulfill their trust responsibilities. So, you know, the confirmation hearing is going on right now for Representative Holland. And I think you have a good advocate now with the governor now as a tribal leader who can, you know, assuming Ms. Holland gets approved as secretary, we'll be able to advance these requests to make sure that we can all do our jobs, and BIA and the Realty offices can get the support and the resources that are needed so that you know, we can overcome some of these existing barriers. So I think it's a hopeful time right now, and certainly on behalf of the coalition, I want to thank you for what you do and everyone at the Realty offices. And I appreciate being able to work together and get these questions answered and move forward. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys. And I know, excuse me, I know you mentioned your name, but I forgot. I'm sorry. We didn't go through formal introductions. That's what happened. I stole everything. I started rambling on. So I didn't get any introductions from anybody, any of the participants. So I'm sorry I didn't get your name.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so this is Dave Castillo. I'm the CEO for Native Community Capital. We're a CDFI that's based out of Laguna. And
okay. Well, you tell Governor I said hi.
Yeah.
If you see him.
Yeah, we were on the phone yesterday, and we'll be on the phone again next week. So we're really thankful to have him there, and again, thankful for this time. So thanks again.
Yeah, and this from my side of the house, everybody, I do appreciate that you invited me. I hope I clarified some questions and helped you through it. You can always try to contact me on my work cell phone, 980-2278. I don't know if, I'm sure Sheila, everybody has my email. You can contact me there too. Okay. Usually my work hours are from 7:45 to 4:30. So you can call me in between, or you call me after. If you call me after, it doesn't necessarily mean I'll answer or I won't answer. If I have my phone with me, I'll most likely answer. I know these are important times for everybody, and just, you know, I appreciate being invited. I appreciate you guys getting together to communicate as a whole instead of individually, and working and trying to get the same information all at one time from the federal government or from one entity. That helps a lot. That's enormous, because if we all hear from that one person at one time, we don't have to second guess, or we don't have to get it by third person, and that's very helpful. So anytime, you know, I can be of help, and of course I'll reach out if I need some help, and I know you guys will be there. So from the BIA side, we appreciate it. We thank you, and we thank you for working on behalf of all tribal members and trying to get them homes and trying to get things for them that they need. So thank you guys. As a tribal member, I really appreciate that, what you guys are trying to do and educate our tribal members in home ownership out there on the reservation. So thank you guys, and keep up the good work and keep moving forward. And even when times are tough, you know, just tighten your belt and kind of move forward and work with one another to try to ease some of the frustration and on these actions. So again, thank you guys. And, you know, if we have this again and you want to invite me, I'm of course willing to come. Just let me know. And I appreciate Sheila's help and getting me on the phone and calling me and telling me, hey, James, we really need this. I appreciate that because sometimes I need a fire lit under me from time to time. So I appreciate it, guys. I hope that I helped a little bit today.
Yes, you did. Thank you so much.
And
Thank
if
you,
you guys
James.
if you guys have a separate question, don't hesitate to call me, okay?
Okay. Bye.
Thank you,
Have a good week. Stay safe.
Yeah.
Guys, all stay safe out there, okay? Protect yourself.
Yeah, you too, Mr. Ration. Thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
bye now.
Okay, well, Sheila, I think this concludes this webinar, but we got a lot of participation in the chat as you guys were seeing. I think it really makes sense to continue this. The coalition has obviously historically held meetings pretty regularly, and now in COVID, we've moved to this webinar format. And we thank the folks from the housing authorities who probably had to split duties. We know the SWIFA event is taking place today, so thank you for joining us on this call. And again, thank everyone for their comments and chat. I'm sorry that we weren't able to answer all the questions. Sheila, do you have any thoughts for kind of next steps? I know we want to kind of, the coalition members are going to debrief after this call, but anything now for the folks that are still on the line?
It kind of sounds like that everybody, being that this is just an informal call, it sounds like we still really need a lot of information on them. I mean, we got to keep separate the HERTH Act from everything else. And, and I know there was 3 different subjects going on. And when I was talking to Mr. Ration, we kind of said, okay, let's keep the HERTH Act out of this and, work with all the other tribal members. But I guess, still the survey, the title status reports and the EAs, I think we really need to still kind of get a grasp on that. I appreciate all the comments that Lisa was putting on there, but, maybe we could follow up on a call like that maybe next month.
That sounds good. If anyone who's still on the call has any suggestions for our next session, anything that didn't get followed up here that we've discussed here, please let us know. Charlene Rosales is our contact there at MFA, and MFA has been very generous in paying for some staff time to help facilitate the coalition's activities. And then, of course, me and Sheila are available at any time as well. Again, thanks everyone for being part of this. Any last words, Sheila or Charlene?
Just really quick, a couple comments about the recording. So MFA right now is in the process of revamping our website, and we're having a dedicated New Mexico Tribal Homeownership Coalition page. It's in beta testing right now, so it'll be up soon, and we'll definitely put this recording on that page. So just stay in touch, and I'll email that link out whenever it's ready.
I can also send it out. I don't know if you guys wanted to do that as well to everyone who registered.
I think that'd be a great idea.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just want to congratulate Yvette Harold just announces an $8.3 million in tribal housing grants. So I just got that. And the grants were awarded in the amount of, I guess, to Acoma Pueblo, Seta Pueblo, Laguna Pueblo, Mescalero, and Zuni tribes. So congratulations to all of those tribes who received money for tribal housing grants.
All right. I don't have anything else. So I think, Dave, you had another announcement, right?
Oh, yeah. Just real briefly before everyone signs off, we do have an agreement with MFA for homebuyer education. And I know during the COVID time, that's really difficult to do. So we have worked with several pueblos to make funds available to cover a portion of your costs to provide homebuyer education. So we'll be reaching out. I see Lindsay on here and some of the other folks that we've worked with. So I'll be reaching out again and get this money spent. It came to us through MFA, but from Freddie Mac. So if anyone on the call here has some homebuyer education sessions planned, we do have an ability to use online resources and have that as an eligible activity, as long as the tribe still confers with the individual on a one-on-one session, either by phone or in person, as long as it's COVID safe, and then you can qualify for those funds. So if anyone's got any of that planned this year, do give me a call and I'll put my information here. And again, thanks everyone for your attendance.
Bye, everybody. Thank you. Have a great week.